The laughter inside the crowded neighborhood bar stopped so suddenly that even the bartender froze with a glass in his hand. Every pair of eyes turned toward one table where a tired single father had just made an innocent joke to a woman sitting alone in a wheelchair. He had no idea she was one of the most respected CEOs in the country. What happened next wasn't angry, humiliating, or cruel. It was a single sentence spoken with quiet confidence that revealed a painful truth, silenced the room, and changed one struggling father's life forever. Before we continue, if you believe kindness is stronger than judgment and everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Moments Hub. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories like this every week. Ryan Carter was 35 years old, and exhaustion had become a permanent part of his face. Every morning began before sunrise. He prepared breakfast, packed lunches, braided his 8-year-old daughter Lily's hair with clumsy fingers that were better suited for repairing engines than styling little girls, and hurried to his construction job before dropping her off at school. Since his wife Emily had passed away 3 years earlier after a sudden illness, Ryan had become both father and mother. There were no weekends, no vacations, and almost no moments when he wasn't worried about bills. Money was always short. Rent had increased twice in a year. Lily needed new glasses. His aging pickup truck sounded like it might stop running at any moment. Yet Ryan never complained in front of his daughter. Every evening he smiled, helped with homework, made simple dinners, and read bedtime stories even when his eyes struggled to stay open. Friday evenings were different. Once every few weeks, after Lily stayed with his elderly neighbor for a few hours, Ryan visited Murphy's bar. It wasn't about drinking heavily. It was about remembering that he was still human. The familiar sounds of old music, sports on television, and friendly strangers helped him forget life's weight for just a little while. That particular Friday, the bar was unusually crowded because a local baseball game had just ended. Every table seemed full except one near the large front window. Seated there was a woman in her early 40s with elegant dark hair resting neatly on her shoulders. She wore a simple navy blue business suit instead of expensive designer clothing. A sleek wheelchair rested beneath the table, but Ryan barely noticed it at first. Her posture was confident, her expression thoughtful, and a laptop bag sat beside her chair. Ryan politely asked whether the seat across from her was available. She smiled warmly and nodded. For several minutes they simply watched the television showing sports highlights while customers celebrated around them. Ryan noticed that everyone seemed unusually serious whenever they walked past her table, but he assumed she was simply enjoying a quiet evening. Trying to lighten the mood, he jokingly looked toward the crowded dance floor and laughed that at least she had the perfect excuse to avoid being dragged into terrible dancing tonight. The joke wasn't cruel. It wasn't intended to insult her. It was simply awkward humor from a tired father trying to start a conversation. The woman looked directly into his eyes. Then she smiled. Her reply came so gently that nobody expected the effect it would have. She quietly said that her legs had stopped working years ago, but thankfully her sense of humor never did. The room became silent. Several customers lowered their heads. Ryan felt his stomach sink. He immediately realized how thoughtless his words had sounded. Before he could apologize, the woman smiled again and told him something even more surprising. She explained that people either treated her like she was invisible or like she was too fragile to laugh. Very few simply talked to her like an ordinary person. Ryan apologized sincerely anyway. She accepted it without hesitation. That simple exchange broke the tension, and for the next hour they talked about ordinary life. Ryan spoke about Lily, about working overtime, about trying to raise a happy little girl despite constant financial pressure. The woman listened more than she spoke. She asked thoughtful questions. She remembered every detail. She never once mentioned her career. When Ryan admitted he sometimes feared he wasn't doing enough for his daughter, the woman looked toward the window where rain had begun falling. She quietly said that children rarely remember expensive gifts. They remember who stayed. Those words stayed with Ryan. When it was time to leave, he thanked her for the conversation. She simply introduced herself as Victoria. No last name. No business card. Nothing else. Ryan drove home believing he had simply shared a meaningful evening with a kind stranger. The following Monday, Ryan reported to work expecting another exhausting week. Instead, he discovered dozens of luxury vehicles parked outside the construction company. Employees whispered nervously. Executives wearing expensive suits walked through the building inspecting every department. Nobody understood what was happening. A rumor spread that a powerful investment company was considering purchasing the struggling construction business. Around lunchtime, everyone gathered inside the warehouse. The company owner introduced an important guest. Ryan nearly dropped the clipboard in his hands. Walking confidently toward the stage in the same wheelchair was Victoria. Except today she wasn't simply Victoria. She was Victoria Bennett, founder and CEO of Bennett Urban Development, one of the largest real estate companies in the region. Her organization owned hotels, hospitals, office towers, and housing projects across several states. News articles often described her as one of the country's most influential business leaders. Ryan couldn't believe it. She noticed him immediately. Instead of pretending not to know him, she smiled exactly the same way she had inside the bar. Her speech surprised everyone. She spoke about leadership. She spoke about character. She said companies could always purchase equipment, technology, and buildings. Finding genuinely good people was much harder. She explained that during every business acquisition she secretly visited locations beforehand to observe employees without revealing her identity. Managers usually tried to impress her. Workers usually ignored her. Only once had someone sat down simply because another human being looked alone. Ryan realized she was talking about him. Victoria never mentioned the awkward joke. Instead, she described how Ryan spent nearly an hour talking about his daughter instead of complaining about life. She described how he apologized immediately after realizing his mistake. She explained that accountability without excuses revealed far more about character than perfection ever could. The warehouse remained completely silent. Some employees stared at Ryan in disbelief. His supervisor looked equally shocked. Victoria announced that Bennett Urban Development would purchase the construction company but planned to keep every hard-working employee. She also revealed a new leadership development program. The first employee selected wasn't the loudest. It wasn't the most experienced manager. It wasn't the person with the best resume. It was Ryan Carter. Ryan stood frozen. He had never managed anyone before. Victoria explained that technical skills could be taught. Integrity could not. Over the following months, Ryan received professional training, mentoring, and opportunities he had never imagined possible. He worked harder than ever. He arrived early. Stayed late. Learned budgeting, project planning, leadership, and communication. Whenever he doubted himself, Victoria reminded him that confidence grows through responsibility, not comfort. At home, life slowly changed. Ryan finally replaced the unreliable truck. Lily received new glasses without worrying about the price. Their tiny apartment became a cozy townhouse with a small backyard where Lily planted flowers every spring. For the first time since Emily's passing, Ryan felt hope replacing survival. But success didn't change him. He still volunteered at Lily's school. He still helped elderly neighbors carry groceries. He still remembered every difficult day that had brought him there. Months later, Bennett Urban Development organized a charity dinner supporting children who had lost parents. Hundreds attended. Business leaders, reporters, teachers, firefighters, and community volunteers filled the ballroom. Ryan was invited to share his story. Standing before the audience, he admitted something that made everyone smile. He confessed that the best opportunity of his life had started with the worst joke he had ever told. The room filled with gentle laughter. Then he became serious. He explained that what changed everything wasn't luck. It wasn't money. It wasn't meeting a famous CEO. It was the kindness she showed after an honest mistake. She could have embarrassed him. She could have walked away. Instead, she chose understanding. Ryan looked toward Victoria sitting in the front row. She smiled proudly. When she addressed the audience afterward, she shared a lesson nobody forgot. She explained that people often spend their lives hiding behind titles, appearances, and assumptions. But real character only appears in ordinary moments when nobody thinks they are being judged. She admitted that living with a disability had taught her something priceless. Some people notice the wheelchair before they notice the person. Others noticed the person first. She always remembered the difference. The audience stood together in a long standing ovation. Ryan looked toward Lily, now smiling from the front row beside her teachers. He realized Emily would have been proud. Not because he had earned a better position. Not because he now lived more comfortably. But because he had remained the same caring father through every hardship. Years later, Ryan often visited Murphy's bar after work. Whenever he saw someone sitting alone, he never assumed they wanted to be left alone. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. But he always remembered one extraordinary evening that had begun with embarrassment and ended with hope. He learned that every stranger carries a story we cannot see. A single moment of kindness may become the turning point in someone else's life. And sometimes the quietest reply can echo louder than the loudest room. If this story touched your heart, please type the words, "Kindness changes lives," in the comments below. We'd love to know you're watching with us. As this story comes to an end, remember that we never truly know the battles someone else is fighting. A little patience, a sincere apology, and a small act of compassion can open doors that pride never will. Ryan walked into that bar believing he had nothing left to offer the world except his hard work. He walked out carrying a lesson that transformed his future forever. If this story inspired you, please like the video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to Moments Hub. Your support helps us continue sharing emotional stories that remind the world kindness still exists. Until next time, take care of yourself, and never underestimate the power of treating every person with dignity.